Hi, welcome to my channel and my studio. We're going to talk about doing a 6-colour primary and secondary colour wheel. Now, how we're going to choose our primary and secondary colours, we're going to refer to this Quiller colour wheel to give us some guidance. Now, we won't be using the exact colours on here because what we're trying to do is explore how close we can get within the colours that we already own. And then we can see where we might need to expand our palette if we were going to add additional colours to our collection. So, for a primary and a secondary palette, we're still going to be working with 6 colours in very similar way to we did with the split primary. But instead of 2 yellows, 2 reds, 2 blues, we're going to have as close to possible as a cad yellow light, a permanent rose, and a phthalo blue, with a viridium, a cad red, and an ultramarine violet. Now, we don't have all of those colours in this collection. Let's see what we get, what we have, and how close we can get. So this is the chart we're going to be working on. So again, we have our key, our yellow, our red, orange, our magenta, our blue, violet, cyan, and green are the colours that we're going to be aiming for. So let's pull out our swatches that we did in the first section and see what we can do. So we've got our golden deep, our raw sienna, our sepia, an emerald, a deeper green, cad red, we've got a lemon, cad yellow, okay, and we've got our carmine, our cerulean, and our ultramarine. Now, as we mentioned before, we've kind of got some holes in this selection of colours. So let's see how we can go. So we need a yellow. Now, our yellow should be somewhere that's something that's fairly central. So they've got a cad yellow pale. Now we have a lemon and a cad yellow medium. Now I'm going to pick the lemon because I think that this will give us just a little bit more flexibility out of the colours we have, because we also have a golden and that will fit our red orange. Yep, we'll go with the golden. So we'll put our cad yellow out and we'll put our cad red out. Now we're going to need a magenta, which is going to be close to our carmine. Now we don't really have a blue violet. The closest I can come is ultramarine. Cyan is the closest I can come, well, the cerulean blue is the closest I can come to cyan. And green, which should be a phthalo green, which is a viridium. This is really a PG7, so it's just about spot on. And again, we'll take out our earth colours. So these are our 6 colours for our primary and secondary colour wheel. So let's add them to our chart. So first one is lemon, PY3. And these are all White Nights paints. Then we're going to have a, yes, we'll stick with the golden deep. So it's a red orange would be ideal. This is a little bit probably paler. PO62, then magenta is the carmine, PR19, and the blue violet we're going to have to use ultramarine, PB29, and our cyan, which will be our cerulean. And our green, which we're going to use the emerald. And let's paint out those 6 primaries first, starting with the lemon. Now you could do this exercise and change the colours a little bit. We could have used the Cad Yellow Medium here and then used the Cad Red Light as our red orange. So it's not like there's a wrong answer as such. This is to explore how well our colours fit certain characteristics. And we'll use the carmine. Blue violet. Cyan, which we'll use cerulean. And emerald. Okay, and then we're just going to start to mix the colours in between. So obviously with our yellow with a bit of green. Now just remember that that viridian will go a very long way. It's very intense. But look at how bright and also how strong that really bright colour is. And that's courtesy of that incredible emerald green. So the orange that we're going to make is going to be a bit of a paler orange. So and again, it's a fairly bright orange. Add a bit more yellow to that. Now, one of the interesting things about this particular chart, we're going to mix red. Now you probably remember being told that a primary colour is a colour that can't be mixed from anything else. Well, within a certain so that's been that golden and that magenta. And you would have to agree that neither of those colours are particularly like red, but I would call that colour that I'm painting there, I'd be fairly comfortable calling that colour red. I just mixed that colour. That colour was mixed with that red orange and that magenta. This is one of the advantages of having higher tinting strength but paler colours, brighter colours in your palette, because you can mix a deeper colour in between. Now, we know our violet that we'll get from our carmine and our ultramarine. It's a beautiful, intense. Now, so far, one of the advantages of this particular palette is that we're getting an even mixture of colours. Now let's see where our ultramarine and cyan. Now again, oh, that's going to be way too much. So you can see, because of this cyan, the blue that we mix is just not quite as intense. It's a little bit softer. It's probably a better sky colour, to be honest, than just a straight ultramarine. Rightio, now we go to the cyan, and we're going to need a really little bit of the viridian, of the emerald, because it's going to be super powerful. Here we go. And now we can see just how much stronger that colour is in comparison to what we could mix with the yellows and the cyan, because we have the advantage of the extra pigment strength of this emerald green. And that's how we can determine how well balanced our palette is. So, from what we've learned, we have our split primaries with our mixtures in between, the colours that we can mix with our cool triads, some of these softer and more interesting colours in the warm triads, and then on to some really vibrant colours that we can mix with a primary and secondary colour chart. This has given us a really wide range of colours that we can actually mix from just a few paints from a fairly budget beginner's set. Now, what we can see from this particular set, when we have a look at our colour wheel, some of the areas that we're lacking, even when we bring in the colours that we haven't actually included in these mixing studies, we're missing things like an ultramarine violet or a dioxazine violet or a mineral violet. That would be one of the colours that I would consider adding to a set like this. It gives you greater flexibility when you're actually trying to mix to start off with. But one of its biggest advantages comes with when you want to neutralize colors. So when you want to neutralize a color, you want to use the color that is opposite it on the color wheel. Now, if you don't have something like an ultramarine violet, dioxazine violet, you will always be having to mix your violet with like an ultramarine and a magenta to make your violet, and then you would neutralize your yellow. So that's one of the advantages with having a convenience colour. So the other problem that we have with this particular selection of colours is that with our blues, we have our ultramarine, which is a really lovely warm blue, and it's got a beautiful pigment load. But our second blue is a cerulean blue. Now, it's a pretty colour, but because of its opacity and its low tinting strength, if we come over to the Colour Wheel by Bruce McAvoy, our cerulean blue is actually a little bit, and in fact I think that this cerulean blue that we have here, rather than being here on this particular colour wheel, I actually think that it's paler again. So we can't mix anything. So even if we have our ultramarine blue and our phthalo green, which is over here, so this is a PG7, we will have trouble trying to mix any of these tones because our cerulean blue just won't get us out to this strength of colour. So if I was considering to add another colour to this particular collection of colours, I would be considering something like either a phthalo blue or a phthalo cyan, or maybe even a cobalt teal, because these colours out here will pull the values of my blues further along and I will get a lot more out of them. So we're well covered for our neutral mixes on the inside. The other challenge with only having that cerulean blue is when we try and neutralize our oranges with our cerulean blue, it's going to be very, very weak, and we're going to use a lot more blue and a tiny, tiny little bit of orange, and we're still probably going to make more warmer greys with that particular mix. So this is a way to analyze. This is by painting out your charts, by having a look at the colors that you can actually create, you can see where you have the strength in your colors in your color palette and really be able to identify where there are weaknesses. I'm just going to show you some examples with some other paints with the same sort of a process, just so that you can see some of the variations that we can have. So this first one I'm going to show you is, all these paints are from a manufacturer, Roman Small. Now I do have quite a lot of their colours. I'm very impressed by their quality of paint and their range. So I've put together a little, this is like my sort of everyday palette, and then these are the rest of the colours. I think I still have one or two others, so I've got a few to choose from. So going through all of that selection to do my split primary. Now the goal is, when I'm trying to choose colours to do this, I'm trying to balance them out around the colour wheel in such a way that I get as varied a mixture as possible. So my cool yellow was at what they call Aquarius yellow, which is PY168, and my warm yellow was a Hansa yellow medium, a PY74. My cool blue in this case is a phthalo blue-green shade, PB15:3. My warm blue, the French ultramarine, PB29. My cool red is the quinacridone red, which is a PV19. And my warm red is Pyrrole Scarlet, PR255. So you can see these colours actually, because I have a phthalo blue as my cool blue, I've got a beautiful range of fairly intense greens that I can make. So when we compare those greens to the greens that I can make with a cerulean blue and the lemon, you can see that the intensity of colour is much more, it's significantly stronger. Because I have a lot more colours to choose from, when I'm choosing my colours for my primary and secondary, I wasn't just restricted to these colours. So I went through and had a look to see if I had colours that closer matched the colours on the Quilla wheel. So in this case they have a cad yellow pale as their primary yellow, a phthalo blue and a permanent rose or a quin rose. So I have got a benzimidazole yellow, a PY154 as my yellow. I have my magenta is a PR122, and I have for my cyan a phthalo blue green shade, PB153. So these are my primaries. So my secondaries, the red orange, I have a pyrrole scarlet, and then again the blue violet. I didn't really have something that was better than the ultramarine blue in this case, so I stuck with that. And for the green, again the phthalo green. So I've got a phthalo blue and a phthalo green. So my blue green is incredibly intense in this particular wheel. I have really beautiful violets available to me, and you can see how beautiful intense. This blue is a mixture of the ultramarine and the phthalo. That's an incredibly powerful blue. So we can see with our mixed primaries, so our blue, this is considered a primary colour. You would think that that is a good example of primary blue, but this is a colour that is mixed from the phthalo blue and the ultramarine, and we get this incredibly intense blue. And the same with our red. Our magenta and our red orange create this amazingly deep red. They are beautiful primary colours mixed from our secondaries. So this gives you an idea about how you can see how well the colours you've chosen are balanced. This is just another primary and secondary chart. Now you'll see this one is also a White Nights chart as well. This is actually, I have another set of White Nights paints. Now these ones I have put together myself over last sort of 2 years from individual full pans. Now I was just vaguely aware of colour theory, so I was learning as I was choosing these particular colours, and I've added to it over the times to try and fill in areas that were somewhat problematic. So from this you can see I've got a nice big range from the yellows through the earthy reds to the magentas. I've got a nice selection of blues and some greens, and then some more earth colours, and then a beautiful, bit of sparkly gold just for a bit of fun at the end. Now, how does this colour wheel look? So choosing 6 colours out of that palette. So for my yellow, I have the lemon, which is the same as in the set that we've just done. Let's see if I can put them side by side. They are on different sort of papers, so they will look a little bit different. So the lemon is the same pigment. Now one thing I will say, I much prefer the White Nights paint in the full pans. To me, the pigment intensity and the way the paints handle out of the pans is far better in a pan than I have found in those tubes. Like, they're not a bad selection of colours, they're not bad paints, but to be perfectly honest, if I had a choice of working with one or the other, I would be using the pans every time. So that's just a little mini review of a comparison. So you can see here how much more intensity I've gotten out of these colours, but there are some differences. So we've got the same lemon yellow as our yellow. Our red orange, we've got a golden deep here. Now I always said that could have been a little pale. So this is a fairly orange, red orange, whereas my red orange on this one, I have a Titan red. And you can see this is a much more red orange. And again, a colour with much more value in it. Like, it's so much more intense. So the oranges that we can mix between these two, we can see we've got a lot more scope. Now, a magenta is a PR122 versus the PR19. Look, I think they're both really pretty colors. This magenta's obviously faded off a bit of a combination of different pigment and a different paper. But again, the color intensity out of the pans is significantly better. So we could mix this amazingly intense red from this red orange, the Titan red, and the magenta. Great red. Now, so from the magenta, the blue violet. Now again, I don't actually have a violet in this collection. The blue that I do have in this is an indanthrene blue, which is a PB60, one of my favorite blue pigments. It's a high staining blue. It's got quite a deep value range, so it can go from very, very dark, and you can see that it lightens out to really soft blue. But its value range is really striking. And as you can see, when we mix that indanthrene with the magenta, we get an incredibly deep violet, and we've got so much potential to work with this color. Now for our cyan, we have a color that they call azure, which is the PB15. Now PB15 is phthalo blue, so this is really just another phthalo blue. Now what's interesting is this phthalo blue has not come out quite as intense as I would think a phthalo could be, which means that between the phthalo and the indanthrene, because the indanthrene is so powerful, I have ended up with quite a deep blue mix here. I possibly could have lent a bit more towards the phthalo here to get it a bit better balanced, but we've still got an amazing range. And as you can see, when you dilute out the phthalo, you've almost got a similar color down here as you can get with the cerulean. So I'm not missing out on a lot. I don't have this lovely bright sort of pale blue that you have with the ultramarine, but I would argue that I could possibly tint this cyan, this phthalo blue, with just a little hint of magenta, and we'd start to get close. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I have options for changing and for mixing. So from the cyan, we go to our green, and again we've got the same emerald. So these are the same pigments, but again the pigment that I have in the pan I think is a better pigment load and a better color. So then the colors that we mix, so our blue green, again so much more intense. Our green yellow, because the pigment load I think is better in the pans, we've got a more intense green yellow. And all of our mixtures are brighter. So this is a way that we can analyze and assess. It's not saying that this is bad. If this is what you've got to work with, you know where your strengths are, you know where the weaknesses are. And you can make decisions about, when I run low on X pigment, do I replace it with the same thing, or do I make another choice that will get me closer to what I need to work on? I hope that that helps you see how we can utilize these tools to assess and analyze and critique our own palettes and try to make better decisions about what is going to help us as an artist. Thank you.